I used to say horrible things to my father and tell lies about him to others because my mother made me. My dad was physically abused by my mom. She bashed his head into walls and bathtubs and threw blow dryers at him. She bit him and made him bleed so many times. She said really cruel things to him and somehow made herself out to be a victim of an abusive husband. I was forced to watch it and often forced by my mom to participate in it and say horrible things to my father and then defend her and testify against him, not legally, but just informally to other family members, as a kid, adolescent. They are divorced now, thank God, but I have so much guilt still. This went on for years. My dad always defended me and tried to protect me from my mother, but that made my mom even more angry and she would make me defend her to him. I still can't look him in the eye. Even though I had a choice, at the time I felt helpless. I knew the only way to protect myself was to submit to my mother. She had this way of making it impossible to say no. I believed, and I think she also believed, that she had absolute control over me, that she was all-powerful and that no was simply not an option. Even at 23, living with her as an adult due to COVID, I still feel the exact same way, as though I simply must obey her no matter what she asks of me. I know that's on me, though, as an adult. Even though I absolutely dreaded those phone calls she made me make to my father, her sitting next to me making sure I didn't leave out any of the horrible things I was supposed to tell him. The anxiety and guilt was so intense I would sort of dissociate and just try to become totally numb. I'd be in my room and all of a sudden I'd hear her banging things in the kitchen, screeching my name at the top of her lungs, in this hysterical, enraged, almost animalistic voice. My heart would sink. It was the worst feeling I've ever experienced. Far worse than being screamed at myself. She'd sob and squirm and flail and beg me to tell your father what he's doing to you. Who loves you more? Who's the abusive one here, me or your father? Then she'd shoot me the most intense and terrifying look as if to, you better do exactly what I want right now or you'll be sorry. I wasn't literally, cognitively scared she would hurt me or kill me. My God, it was like we were back in the jungle in those moments. She'd literally jet out her jaw as if growling. It really felt animalistic. I get chills just thinking about that look. I can't quite describe its effects except to say I was instantly stunned into helpless submission. I've yet to encounter anyone with the same ability to stun and scare you into complete submission merely with their eyes. It's spooky. She seemed legitimately insane this whole time. Wailing, inconsolable, totally incoherent. I was so scared and could not figure out what to do. All I knew is that I was dead meat if I told anyone. And that I couldn't leave. She'd get me back and make life 10x worse than before. Sometimes I would be so filled with fear and anxiety and guilt during these episodes, where I was forced to verbally abuse my dad, that I became mute. Like literally unable to speak. The words wouldn't come out even though I needed to say them to survive. I'd try to say them and I'd just panic and become unable to speak. I'd begin crying and hyperventilating, sometimes I'd hit myself, unable to stop even when I tried to force myself to stop. Or I'd feel compelled to hide under the nearest desk or table and curl up into a ball. Looking back, I think I was dissociating. I was so overwhelmed it was like I just shut down. I'd look away and say everything she wanted me to say to my dad, but in the most monotone and lifeless voice imaginable. My mom would get furious at the insincerity of my tone and I'd try to muster up some fake, genuine emotion, but I often couldn't manage to. I wonder if it's because some part of me was dissociated or trying to dissociate. She would also send emails and text messages from my phone to my dad, often without telling me. This wasn't as painful as the face-to-face interactions, because I could avoid the guilt and anxiety or it, and my mother's texts to him from that phone were so outrageous, and obviously in her voice, that it was quite obvious to my dad who was texting him. I found this a blessing in disguise because I didn't have to participate when it was happening. I can't believe I just submitted to her. I should have reported her abuse of my dad and just gone and lived with my dad. Anyway, these fights especially scared and confused me because the gender roles were reversed. I was an only child and didn't tell anyone. I always prayed the neighbors would call the cops, still have so much guilt about what happened to my dad and my part in it. I got fired from a job for stealing a coworker's prescription Xanax a few years back. We had lockers in the break room. It was a shitty retail store and most people didn't even bother putting locks on them, and I saw a pill bottle in one of them, took a closer look and realized it was someone's prescription Xanax. I kept taking it every time I went to work. I would sneak into the break room and take some pills. One day I saw the guy whose pills they were. He had his name on the bottle, obviously cause it was a prescription, talking to the manager. Instantly I knew why he was talking to her. He noticed his pills missing, lol. A few days later I got called into the office, had to talk to some guy from HR or some shit like that, ended up getting fired. They saw me on camera taking the pills. I literally haven't told a soul about this until now. I knew there were cameras the whole time, I just didn't really care. I just wanted to get fucked it, as I used to have a bad pill and alcohol problem. But I'm sober now. I spilled someone else's grandfather's ashes and scooped them back into the urn. Basically, I was staying over a friend's house while he was traveling out of state. He needed a housekeeper because he had a few important packages and visits coming up. He was fixing the house for sale, so like gardeners and repairmen were showing up. I was a little nosy, and knowing that no one else would know, I snuck around his bedroom areas. I know, I have zero excuse. He was a sort of corridor that leads into the bedroom and a nook in the wall with an urn. Me being clumsy, I fell and knocked it over. The urn, being steel or some other metal, didn't break, but it did spill. Now I'm not a huge religious or spiritual person, so my main concern was no one finding it out. End of story. A broom and pan and all the ash was back in the urn. So far I have not been caught. He sold the house and moved the urn to his new one. I don't think I'll ever be caught, but it's nice to get it off my chest. I hacked people's emails but lied and said I was hacked when I was caught. In my middle school you could send out mass emails to entire grade levels, elementary through high school. Whenever we used computers in class, I would watch people type their passwords and then use them to send out emails to our school district with random little messages. Unfortunately, one day I accidentally did it from my own account. To cover my tracks, I went to the librarian and made a big show of how I'd been hacked. The mass emails had of course been happening frequently, so he believed me and helped me change my password. My account was then very secure. I stole my teacher's eraser and buried it together with my friend. I was in the last year of elementary and me and my friend who didn't like this teacher had the idea to steal something from her, so we did it, but then we got so anxious about that we decided to bury the body of the crime the next day. Worked at a shipping company, stole a speaker and wireless earbuds. I have no excuse for what I did or anything, just a piece of shit, lol. I used to work at this factory about a year ago now, and they would have all types of things there that you could think of. Shit like Xboxes, TVs, headphones, speakers, turntables, and once I even seen a really large set of subwoofers. Anyways, I'm working my usual shift and was bored out of my mind. I realized I could probably take a speaker and get away with it just because I needed a speaker. I would do my rounds about the factory and do my normal duties, pick and pull all things from online orders and place them on a dolly looking thing. I would stuff my order on the dolly and then put the speaker in the middle of the boxes where it was hidden. It wasn't that big at all, it was only a Marley speaker, no bound sport. When no one was looking I would go down a corridor and look for any cameras or people. After I seen I was in the clear I would open the package slowly and eventually took the speaker and put it in my pants. I took my hoodie off and put it over my front was it to hide the bulge and went to my locker and put it in. I eventually did wireless earbuds too that were like $300. I continuously stole mail from others while in the service, just to have a few extra dollars. I was in the service for 6 years. First year in I realized, there ain't much pay in the paycheck. My parents sent some money one day and I didn't get to mail call before it closed. I worked night shift. I was desperate. I waited a couple hours after shift and found a way to break into the mailroom cage to get my mail. This was back in the early 90s. Columbia House was still popular as well as still sending money and birthday cards. I found my mail, but also rifled through everything else. If it was a birthday card, I'd take it. If it was someone's CD order from Columbia House, I'd take it. I would take the CDs to a pawn shop once a week, and pocket money from the birthday cards. I substantiated my income quite a bit. I did it about 3 or 4 nights a week. No one ever caught on. I don't feel very honorable.